Hello, welcome to Integrating Ozone and UVI in Your Clinic. This is a quick overview of these two therapies put together in one IV. UVI stands for ultraviolet blood irradiation, oftentimes called UV light therapy. Now we'll cover briefly ozone and UV light therapies, the science, indications, and procedure. So we'll talk about these two in a synergistic way, and you'll see how we'll break them out in the slides to come. But basically, they're photodynamic light therapy and oxygen therapy, and they're both going to work together combined in one IV, triggering a biochemical response with a mild oxidative stress event. And they're both broad spectrum and systemic therapies, improving at a cellular level. So ozone will bind to a lipid products, creating ozonides, and UV will supercharge the hemoglobin and other blood products. Now, why do we say they're synergistic? There was a company in the 90s that set forth to go get FDA approval of these therapies, and they went under trials. There were multiple trials that they were a part of. One of the main ones was double-blind, placebo-controlled, had 5 arms. You can read through this slide here. So they saw through 2,500 heart failure patients, just under that, they passed the safety phase and the efficacy phase, which I think is really important information. And they saw that done together, efficacy will increase an additional 20 to 30%. Now, as you can see, done independently, they also have efficacy, but done together, you're going to get more synergistic impacts. So UV light IV basics. Dr. Michael Hamlin, he's considered the world's #1 expert on photodynamic energy. He's written 5 textbooks on light in medicine and published over 350 papers on the positive power of light. I won't read this whole quote here, but basically saying ultraviolet blood irradiation was extensively used in the 40s and 50s, treating many diseases, and it should be more investigated as an alternative approach to infections and as an immune modulating therapy. Now, common uses of light, they're known throughout our country in the United States if you reside here, but countries all over the world are using light therapy, not always recognized as medicine. But if you start to think about it, you're using light in SAD, seasonal affective disorder. There's light boxes, mood disorders, bilirubin. If a baby is born and needs to fight off the bilirubin, there are light blankets that you would wrap the baby in, and some people will just say, put your baby in the sunlight. You use light as medicine. Here are some other examples. Now, in terms of UV IV light therapy, the equipment often involves UVA, UVB, and UVC on the electromagnetic spectrum, and sometimes LED. UV light IV biochemistry summary. Here's just a couple of things. A lot of these slides I will let you guys read on your own. So as you can see, I'll point out a few immune modulating effects. We talked about that. Autoimmune issues are drastically reduced in many patients. Inflammation reducing, oxygenation effects, decreased in pain, and cardiovascular improvement. Now, this slide is important because it's oftentimes the what, not the how. The how is not always understood. UV light, it's multifaceted, it's complex, as is many medications and medicine out there on the market today. But we do know it's immune modulating. We do know UV light interacts with proteins and it interacts with all different cells. Now, the net result is the what. There is a significant decrease in inflammation, and natural antimicrobial activity is markedly increased. Another common observation is that the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood is increased, and that was again by Dr. Michael Hamlin. Ozone IV basics. Now here's some medical history on ozone. It's been used since the early 1900s. It was suppressed, and this is a similar story to UV light. It was suppressed in the USA as pharmaceuticals were issued. Germany, though, did continue to develop it. In 1976, up until now, the FDA says ozone is a toxic gas with no known medical use. That is in quotes. Now, ozone, when breathing into the lungs, is not ozone is not meant to be breathed in by our lungs. And when we talk here today, we are talking the IV application ozone to blood. So there's 10 plus, there's many more coming out, major books and over 11,000 papers and studies on ozone. Dr. Bacci is considered one of the, well, he is one of the best known authors and researchers on ozone. He has put out a lot of information. So just a quick summary, he says ozone's an essential tool for 130 plus disorders. It works on chronic and autoimmune disorders, little to no side effects. It's inexpensive. There's a history there that's long. This is just the start. We'll get into it a little further, but it's effective when other medicines have failed in the past, and many physicians are currently using it. So again, medical ozone in the research by Dr. Bacci. I will not read all of this, but it instantly reacts with blood products. It's antimicrobial, fungicidal, and virucidal. Okay, another couple good ones to point out is that you are improving the micro and the peripheral circulation. So it's a vasodilator. And the hormetic effect, the stress to the body that then creates a secondary benefit. I'll stay on this page if you guys want to read through it a little further. Now there's a paper in 2014 submitted, you can look this up, but it's just talking about some general aspects of ozone therapy. And for those of you who like to dive a little deeper, this is a good page for you to sit in. You should also, I mean, again, you can look up these studies and you can find a lot of this information on the World Wide Web. Here is a flow of what happens with medical grade oxygen as it's turned to ozone, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the slide to come. But again, our targets: oxygen release, release of growth factors, modulation of immune activity, and then the production of vascular, matrosome. Sorry guys, was not even reading that correctly, but the upregulation of oxidative stress proteins and antioxidant enzymes. NRF2 effects, there's a lot of research here. So you're looking at NRF2 stimulation, basically, opening up different channels, the detoxification enzymes, looking at pain regulation and reducing pain, the lowering of oxidative stress. And my favorite one here is just the pivotal regulator of stem cell self-renewal, proliferation, and differentiation. So here's how ozone is produced. You're using oxygen, and the production is from a corona discharge, converting oxygen to ozone. When to use it? So we talked about this with Dr. Bacci. It's treating over 130 illnesses. There's a couple pages of indications here. This is up to the clinician. Let me actually go back a step there so you guys can read through that. Again, this is popular because ozone is becoming more popular and used in more of the biohacking and longevity community. Some of these are repeats. Now, contraindications. So there are some contraindications. The one highlighted are the contraindications for ozone. The two at the bottom are the contraindications for UVI, but basically this is the contraindication as you are combining these two in one IV that you are going to look for when you are having a patient sitting in the chair. Here's a titration schedule. Now, this is clinician discretion. You can do your own titration, and there are different protocols for ozone. So this can be varied, but this is a great example of how to step a patient up, whether conservatively for a more chronically ill population or less conservative for a high functioning sick population. Ozone is dose dependent. You want to step them up. Now, a standard ozone UV treatment can only get you so much in terms of micrograms or gamma of ozone. 25,000 is about your ceiling that you can get with the specific protocol that is widely used. And so that's pulling 60 cc's of blood and then applying that to a saline bag. And then when you get to that higher amount, you are using two 60 cc syringes of blood and then applying ozone to a saline bag filled with the blood. Now, as you can see in the pink on the right-hand side, there's a titration option for high dose. Now, with that, you can get higher thresholds of ozone. So that's an option, but that includes different equipment from a manufacturer. There's other equipment out there that also allows you to get higher thresholds of ozone. This again is just one example. So a good treatment plan, you are going to do a standard ozone UVI. Now again, they're standard, 25,000, gamma ozone or high dose. I'm talking just standard right here. You're going to do about 10 treatments and then reassess. It's going to take a series of treatments. So you can do that 2 to 3 times per week. For chronic, late stage, and acute, 1 time per week for general. Just depends on how you need to prescribe this for your patient using your discernment. Now, it's pivotal for patient outcomes and positive experiences to set the record or to set the expectation correctly. So if someone's having 20 to 50% improvement, you'd recommend another series of 10. Now, if they're 80 to 100% improvement, you would take time off and see the long-term results. With regenerative therapies, you can just do these as needed. So here's IV starter supplies, and then supplies needed for both the standard UV and the high dose UV. I'll hang on this page for a second so you guys can read through. And here's a quick look at the therapy. So imagine a 60 cc syringe there, pre-heparinized. You're using a catheter, or for the standard, you can use a butterfly for the draw. You're going to draw those 60 cc's of blood. You're going to add that to the saline. The saline has already been drained to a certain level to prime, well, I say prime the line, but really get the air out of the line, the tubing that houses the cuvette. The cuvette is a piece that passes underneath the UV light that allows the light to absorb. So in the tubing, there's going to be a quartz glass cuvette, and that is what the blood will flow through when it goes through the UV light equipment. So it's all one tube. So with that, you'll add the blood to the saline that's already been drained out to a certain level. Once you have the blood in that bag, and this is pre-heparinized blood, so heparin was first added to the syringe. Once you have the blood in the bag, you will add ozone, drawing up to the specific dose of your patient. And then it will gravity feed down back to the original place you drew from. Now, as you can see, there's UV equipment right there. Imagine a quartz glass cuvette that sets in that machine, and that is where the blood passes. What is important with UV is length and time, that the blood has time and length to absorb the light. With that, you will control the drip rate in the drip chamber to around 3 drips per second, Or you'll look at total time. Your patient should be sitting under this therapy with their blood dripping back to them for about 22 to 25 minutes. And this is the end. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I hope you guys picked up something and good luck in your future endeavors. Thank you for what you do.